For nearly 2 decades, we have been building healthcare infrastructure, data platform, and compliance-heavy system where precision, accountability, and execution really matter. And today we are talking about something that has never received enough attention: what it actually takes operationally to prepare for a Rebate 340B based environment.
My major concern, I think, with everyone else would be the data integrity and the security of the data. As you probably are aware, we've had some significant breaches in the past, recent past. And I feel that is the cake. The recipe is the same. It does not change. However, you may have chocolate frosting on your cake, or someone else may have, vanilla on theirs or buttercream, but the core is always going to be the same. That's how we can ensure integrity and we can ensure expected outcomes. AI offers eyes where I can't see. As they say, AI doesn't blink, whereas humans have to kind of rest their eyes every now and then. So I do feel there's definitely value to AI in this space with regard to volume and transparency.
Okay, AI and automation are there, but what areas the human expertise are still essential in this whole process? Like where we can say this can't be automated, we can't hand over to AI, we need to have a human part of the system to review, and it is important. So welcome to 340B Pulse, a North Arc Health podcast powered by Purologics. I am Muhammad Atif, your host. I am CTO and founder at Purologics and North Arc Health. For nearly 2 decades, we have been building healthcare infrastructure, data platform, and compliance-heavy system where precision, accountability, and execution really matter. This is why this postcard exists. 340B Pulse is about thoughtful, operator-level conversation, not noise, not headlines, but real execution discussion about how this program functions day to day, how leaders make decisions, and what it takes to prepare before change becomes urgent. And today we are talking about something that has never received enough attention: what it actually takes operationally to prepare for a Rebate 340B based environment. Much of the Rebate conversation has focused on litigation, manufacturer policies, regulatory uncertainty, and whether a final model will actually go live. Those issues matter, but for covered entities, the more practical question is this: if Rebate-style model continue to expand, what will organization need to bear, standardize, track, and govern to operate successfully? Whether the formal model goes live tomorrow, 6 months from now, or in a revised form, the direction is clear: more data submission, more validation, more reconciliation, more vendor involvement, and more pressure on teams that are already lean. We have heard this described as the 5-hour myth, the idea that Rebate readiness is just a few extra hours of work each month. But operationally, it is much bigger than that. And to help us unpack this, we are joined today by Celeste Fowler. Celeste is Executive Director of Pharmacy 340B at Piedmont Healthcare, where she has led the organization's 340B program for several years. With a background spanning pharmacy leadership, operations, healthcare IT, compliance, and patient safety, she brings extensive experience managing 340B at the health system level. Celeste, welcome to 340B Pulse. We are really glad to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Well, Celeste, so before we dive into the details of this topic, can you share us about your journey, about overall, how did you get into this space?
Well, sure. Like many of your other guests, I know that no one intentionally usually desires to fall into the realm of 340B. It usually happens by happenstance, as they say. But I come to you, I was obviously a pharmacy graduate from Florida A&M University, and I was interested in hospital pharmacy and ended up working in several different areas of pharmacy, but landed in long-term care. And then upon going into more of a health system or a hospital arena, I was approached to consider management, which I did at the time, went into hospital supervisor role. And at that point, as I was kind of on a track to go into administration, I became an assistant director of pharmacy at a local community hospital. And during my 10 years as assistant director, I dealt mostly with regular day-to-day operations. It's similar to an operations manager, and then eventually became a candidate for the director role at that hospital, which is, again, a community hospital. And upon my installation as director, my executive looked at me and said, "Get that 403B going. We were supposed to do it several years ago." And of course, I did not know what the 403B thing was. I later became familiar that it was 340B. And so I educated myself, attended university. I'm sure many people are aware of Apexis University, attended those courses, and just tried to ingest or absorb as much information as I could to build and implement a 340B program. So as my role as director became more comfortable for me, I did create the program at the hospital. We were doing just fine, and I definitely was a one-woman show at the time, and I had a very strong buyer who helped me with the program, and we managed it, fairly well on our own for several years. But upon affiliation with a larger health system, they wanted to understand what 340B was, as they had never seen it before. And so during my, introduction to the system, it was identified that we had other hospitals that were also eligible to participate. So that began the journey of, spreading the word about 340B and the benefits of the community hospital setting, and how you can definitely stretch scarce resources, which of course is the intent of the program. So flash forward, my current role is a system role, as you mentioned. We have several hospitals in our health system who met criteria and are currently in the 340B program. And so that is how I became, familiar with different types of programs, different types of communities, and how to best, organize multiple, factions of the same program in different environments, and yet maintain some solidarity and, again, consistency and organization for our health system to make sure we are meeting the needs of our patients throughout the cities that we serve.
Awesome. That's a wonderful journey and transformational towards the 340B. So, Celeste, a lot of today's debate conversation is focused on policy, litigation, manufacturer restriction, and regulatory uncertainty. From your perspective, what do you think healthcare leader may be missing from the operational side of this conversation?
My major concern, I think, with everyone else would be the data integrity and the security of the data. As you probably are aware, we've had some significant breaches in the past, recent past, and that causes a lot of concern with how we transfer and how we use data. Even in our personal lives, we don't want our data being just out into the atmosphere without proper guardrails and protections. And so that, to me, is the major concern. It is in guaranteeing this data and making sure it's even necessary to provide the goal that we are being told it should be used for. I'm not fully sold that this is the way to get to the goal of transparency. If you are in 340B spaces right now, then you already know how much data is involved that we already have to submit through our TPAs and keep track for auditable records. That has been a long-standing requirement and expectation of covered entities to maintain transparency that has never changed. So I don't know that adding another vendor or space for additional information or data would actually change or increase transparency by just giving another set of eyes to the same data that's already in place, with additional fields that are not currently necessary for 340B eligibility at this time.
Got it. So you are saying that we are already submitting a lot of data. The main focus should be on data integrity and security, not asking for more data points.
The data that we're sharing, I will add, is currently more for internal use for qualification. So it's not being shared with outside entities. It's just between that covered entity and their TPA to ensure that the patients are eligible and the dispenses are qualified. Correct.
Got it. And I think you raised a very good point about data integrity and security. So from your experience, have you seen any vulnerabilities or any incident happening where there are no proper security railguards to ensure that data is only used for the right purposes?
I haven't seen it yet, only because this
Hmm.
is new for all of us. I think there's more of a fear of what we don't know,
Yeah,
by adding this a different layer. Our current setup has been very secure. I have been very satisfied with my organization's level of security. I call our IS system Fort Knox, and I'm very proud to work with them very diligently to ensure that every partner that we choose meets the qualifications and expectations. I will say that I do think that there will be some concerns because the current vendors or the current rebate model providers have not been as willing to allow us the same security that we're accustomed to.
yeah,
Their information or their willingness to partner has been pretty much a take it or leave it stance, which that is new for us. Any of our other IS partners have worked collaboratively to make sure there are indemnification clauses, that if there is any issues, we will work together to mitigate them. That type of information and language does not exist in any of these rebate model vendors. Therefore, it leaves the covered entities vulnerable if there is any issue or concern in the future, which is where this poses a problem for me.
got it. So based on this list, so what should leaders be paying closer attention to now operationally?
Right now, I think obviously making your system as tight or as secure as
Hmm.
possible, and only disclosing or providing the least amount of information necessary to meet the needs of the purpose at hand. Although some of the things that are being asked, I still, in a personal opinion, don't feel they are necessary
Hmm.
for patient eligibility. But nonetheless, they are required and being currently demanded by several organizations as far as manufacturers. But I think that I would be very leery to provide unnecessary data. I think I would basically just make sure you carve it down to the bare bones and only give what is asked or what is required.
Got it. 100% and totally agree. So one phrase that has come into the broader debate readiness conversation is that 5 hour myth. The idea that preparing for a debate based model may not require a few extra hours of work each month. Uh, but from an operational perspective, that seems like it may only describe the cleanest possible version of the process. Why might that estimate be misleading?
I feel that the 5 hour myth or the 5 hour assumption is very
Hmm.
misleading. Just in general, in my years of experience, reviewing data has never been a simple task.
Yeah.
It has been, we are very, data rich and information poor in certain areas. So just taking the time to dig, especially if you have large amounts of data. And let's be clear, we are actually adding additional data in this workflow. We are adding, medical claims, which was not ever a part of our process in the past. So having to dig and delve into these different layers of data, I would not think it would take 5 hours. Perhaps
Hmm.
that is the mere uploading of data, but
Yeah.
to get that data to a presentable state, to ensure that it is ingested accurately, to ensure that the information has been received and reported back accurately, those things I do not think could be done within a 5 hour span. I feel that may be, maybe 5 hours a day, perhaps,
Hmm.
and that
Yeah.
may be the misunderstood assumption there, but definitely not just an overall. This is just an extra 5 hours of work for any entity. I don't think that would be an adequate representation of the work if you want to do it correctly. Let me state that doing it the right way is not doing it the fastest way. That would be my
Yep.
concern.
And totally agree on that. I think a lot of conversation just focus on submission of the data, the way you mentioned. But operationally, submission is only one part of the process. So, where do you typically see data gaps? Like, is it on pharmacy data, payer data, NDC information, provider mapping, site mapping, claim statuses, or reversal activity? Like, where does it take a lot of time to fill
Well,
all these gaps?
that's a very heavy question. A very good question. What I've encountered or experienced
Hmm.
as far as gaps is that this information is not housed in one location.
Right.
The data that's being required is not in a one-stop shop. So it's almost like a scavenger hunt, having to go to multiple different sources. If you're a hospital or health system that uses different types of, revenue cycle software versus your pharmacy software versus your EMR in general. Not everyone has an all-inclusive EMR, and these can be
Mhm.
totally separate and disparate processes that need to now come into one file. And that to me is a significant challenge if you are a system that has to pull data that is not housed in the same place. As I mentioned, medical claims data is not billed in the same format as retail or outpatient claims data. So that data is not as digestible or as easily retrieved and packaged up, as someone said earlier, in a bow that you can just hand to someone. You have to be able to tease it out and accurately place it where you want it to be and make sure that it is being ingested correctly. Little things just like units, charge billing units. Are you talking of mLs? Do you mean
Mhm.
milligrams? Are you doing packages? Is it just, an implied quantity in some areas that are being billed, or even HCPCS codes that are
Yep.
charge units? If that language is not set up to be, congruent through all the different areas, you could have a complete mismatch in what you meant to send. Your 1 might be someone else's 10. Your point 2 might be someone else's 20. Just making sure that the language is actually talking to each other in the expected units of measure is a source for me. And like I said, revenue cycle charges may not be housed in the pharmacy system. How it was billed, how it was charged. These things don't bill on a daily basis. There's a constant ebb and flow with medical claims. They're not necessarily locked down like a retail outpatient. Patient picks up their prescription, it's been billed, it's done. Hospital claims ebb and flow. There are payer changes, payer requirements where we are asked to update charges or update statuses based on a payer requirement or a approval or denial. Those things happen day in, day out, all the time. So there's a constant flux of information. And I think the program would have to be fluid enough to ingest those changes, again, accurately and compliantly, but just understanding that this is not a one and done. You can't just set it, send a file, and walk away. That file may be changed or may have to undergo changes. So you have to be able to ingest reversals, updates, all those types of things, along with billing changes. So all of those things to me make this process very, very intimidating and very challenging to ensure the best and most accurate and compliant process.
Got it. And I totally agree on that, Celeste. So, Celeste, let's talk about standardization, automation, AI, and the human review. So, from your perspective, why is standardization so important as cover entities prepare for a more data driven and debate style 340B environment?
I feel that standardization is crucial in being
Mhm.
able to help identify any abnormalities, honestly. For us, I feel like each program is built on our core compliance policy. And I feel that that is the cake. The recipe is the same, it does not change.
Mhm.
However, you may have chocolate frosting on your cake, or someone else may have, vanilla on theirs or buttercream, but the core is always going to be the same. That's how we can ensure integrity and we can ensure expected outcomes. Where I see there being a challenge, if you don't have standardized practices, if something goes awry or amiss, it's harder to identify if all things are not equal to begin with. So it's harder to root cause any abnormalities. It's harder to root cause why do we see a fluctuation in charges here when someone's doing something differently than the rest. So for us, it has definitely been an advantage to have standardized practices and standardized work while still allowing for the unique and individuality of programs. We recognize that each covered entity serves the community they are in, and their community is unique and special. And we need to make sure we can accommodate that, which we do. But again, the core remains the same. And we just have, I've used an analogy that every program is a snowflake. If you've seen one program, 340B wise, you've seen one program that's 340B. They're not all the same. However, the core fundamentals and the expectations for compliance and integrity will always be the same. And those things are constant throughout our entire system.
Got it. And once these processes and compliances are standardized, where do automation and AI become most useful?
I would think that AI and automation is useful for volume. It's
Okay.
definitely the human eye. You can never, to me, replace the critical thinking of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
Although I know we come very close and we do try, but I feel that the goal would be being able to handle volume because as opposed to doing a random sample audit,
Mm-hmm.
AI allows 100% audit, which would not
Right.
be humanly possible without hiring multiple people to say, I look at every single claim and audit it as such.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel that AI definitely creates efficiencies of scale, or I say economies of scale. But it needs to be driven by the human aspect to when it reaches a conflict or an exception, we call it. That's where the human has to come in and say, okay, these things have fallen out. We call those fallouts, and look at those and say, okay, why did this claim appear to be ineligible, and then work through those for compliance. So to me, it gives greater visibility to your program. AI offers eyes where I can't see. As they say, AI doesn't blink, whereas humans have to kind of rest their eyes every now and then. So I do feel there's definitely value to AI in this space with regard to volume and transparency.
Got it. Yeah, I think you raised very good point about the volume. But do you have any like repetitive checks or manual tasks that you think are good candidates for automation?
For me, auditing. I think auditing is
Auditing.
is
Mm-hmm.
crucial for that because it's black and white,
Mm-hmm.
and then sometimes you do have a little bit of gray where you need to come in and bring that human aspect to the clinical judgment of patient eligibility, where there's a clinical piece to that. Is this patient truly being treated for the indication or the diagnosis that the medication is used for? And that may require more of a human intervention. But for me, I think that for compliance was a first and foremost passion of mine. And that's where I felt that AI would be a great source of opportunity.
Right. But do you think it can also, especially the AI part, can help us in identifying like missing data or exception or pattern or maybe any risk signal faster than the human?
No, faster. I would definitely say faster,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because of the volume, the sheer aspect
Yeah.
of volume.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that junk in equals junk out. So it
Yeah.
has to be that we have put the correct data points into the system to get those data points out with the expected outcomes. So as far as referring to where AI fits, it does fit in multiple spaces. You're absolutely correct. I think that it fits in reconciliation is huge. Missing data, if you move from compliance and then you
Right.
move into optimization, that's where
Mm-hmm.
you can look at, okay, why didn't these claims qualify for 340B? Am I missing encounter data? I have the encounter, but somehow my TPA didn't receive the encounter. Did I miss a file that day? Was there a
Mm-hmm.
glitch during an update of the EMR that data was lost? So definitely in those respects, I feel that there's something that the needle in a haystack that a human eye would have to dig to find a loss or opportunity in optimization once you have mastered the art of compliance with that tool.
Got it. And it's less like okay, AI and automation are there, but what areas the human expertise are still essential in this whole process? Like where we can say this can't be automated, we can't hand over to AI. We need to have a human part of the system to review, and it is important.
I feel that the uniqueness of the patient,
Mm-hmm.
there's clinical judgment that comes
Right.
into play, and I've seen that in many of my auditing experiences where it appears that the note may not have reflected what the system didn't pick it up correctly, but yet a human can look at the SOAP note and see, oh yes, this patient
Mm-hmm.
was seen here, and yes, this patient was being treated, or here's a referral that was documented,
Right.
and those are the things that I think the human aspect will bring to that solution. But those things definitely require time. They require clinical expertise and knowledge of your EMR and of the different data points where you're looking. But it is, again, the search and find to make sure that you have treated this patient to the best of your ability, because, again, each patient is unique as well. Each patient is their own, do I dare say, test case that is not a carbon copy of another. So there are things that may potentially fall out of 340B or even maybe fall in that you would have to kind of drill down to see, is this working as expected or as designed? And I do feel that that part requires some clinical or human intervention to make sure those parts are working as expected.
Got it. And I totally agree on that part. And then there are one more kind of thoughts. Less people say that AI and automation, there are a lot of security concern, like a lot of that they don't have the same point that you initiated at the start of this conversation about data integrity and security. Without proper guardrails, like people are very concerned that data is going towards the AI. So what are your thoughts on that part?
I think if used with good intentions, there's definitely, again, a place for that. I do feel that you need to have a thorough review of any partner or any AI, vendor that you're looking into, because, again, depending on how much data you choose to share or give, it is now, out in the universe that you need to make sure that you are aware of how it's being utilized, where it's being utilized. I think for me personally, my concern is, how is this data going to be utilized by manufacturers? Will it be, although we may redact it and secure it to the best of our ability, can a manufacturer reverse engineer this information back to the patient? And that is not the intent of our efforts to remain compliant or to remain, a willing partner in this arrangement between manufacturers and covered entities. We are not trying to endanger or jeopardize our patients' security of their information. I think for me, my first and foremost concern is always the patient. And aside from providing the best care that we can, and of course, increasing access to care, I want to also protect their information and their medical histories to the best of my ability. And I don't take that responsibility lightly at all.
Great. And I think that's the great thing. So just to give you an idea, we were working with one of the largest PBM last year. So we were implementing their 340B command center. So one of the feature that we were building in their command center was about claim approval. So we try to implement AI and automation that based on the data pattern, it can detect that what is the approval rate when we submit it through ESP or Beacon. So then there was a lot of debate about like AI, that should we send this data to AI model or should we have like on-prem our own train model. So we ended up like setting up our own on-site data model, and we trained it, the complete LLM, based on that claims data that we had, because there were like a lot of security guardrails and other requirements that data shouldn't leave the premises. So I totally agree with you. The patient history, the patient detail, and all this secure information should stay within the security guardrails instead of sending to open LLMs.
Yes.
So let's switch the gear a bit and let's talk about financial sustainability and checking the checker. So, Celeste, like one of the biggest concern around the rebate style model is the impact on cash flow, like predictability and financial sustainability. And covered entities may not only need to submit data, they may also need to confirm that the rebates they are owed are actually received back. So what does that change operationally according to like your expertise and experience?
Well, I definitely anticipate a massive change in cash flow. Of course, liquid assets are something that is not readily available for all covered entities. Just by the nature of being eligible for the program, you pretty much have the payer mix that warrants help, that you don't have the benefit of a great deal of commercial payers. Therefore, you are eligible to participate in the program to get that additional help to stretch those scarce resources that you have. I feel that the rebate model definitely stretches those resources beyond measure, as far as it taxes them, I should say, as far as stretching, but makes them almost non-existent, because whatever benefit you may have achieved from the program to try to help provide these services, you are now going to have to turn around and use liquid assets or capital to float and in hopes of waiting for the additional, rebate from a manufacturer. I feel that amount of cash, especially because most of these are very, as you can probably imagine, expensive medications, and we have a high utilization of those medications, having to pay the higher or the WAC price and then wait for the refund is definitely a financial strain. In addition to the resources being used to monitor that the refund that you get or the rebate that you get is even accurate. That's the checker that you mentioned. That will take time. That will take a person, currently covered entities are asked to juggle. And we do a fairly good job by adding additional balls as we are juggling, but we don't have the ability to add additional hands to keep doing this. And we are definitely adding more and more, hoops to jump through to get the rebates or to get the savings that were readily a promise to us, prior to this rebate model implementation. So I feel that resources are already stretched and scarce. I feel that having these service lines that are highly, highly necessary, very needed by patients in their communities, it's hard to sustain those if you don't have a mechanism like 340B to keep a non-profitable service line available for patients who need it the most. So I do think that asking a covered entity to pay the higher price, knowing that they don't have those resources to do it, and then giving them their rebate on the back end is very disheartening. I mean, none of us are obviously in favor of it, but I think that it will cause a backlash of, do we have to shut down programs? Can we still sustain this service line? Does the patient now have to drive to another facility because we can no longer offer it in their community? Because we just can't sustain it. The sustainability just is what makes me nervous, is that these programs may be short-lived because they're not financially viable in the rebate model landscape.
Yeah, and there are a lot of you can say points or questions that are coming to my mind after hearing all these things. That what happens if the payment is delayed or disputed or partially paid or missing? And the same point that you raised. That how can leader protect the patient programs while managing these new financial realities? And another challenge is that how do they track what was expected rebate value, what actually did they receive? So how you are preparing for all these changes if rebate model goes live?
So the first thing, and I've heard some of your other speakers mention this, is knowing your numbers and knowing where you should expect to live in your 340B savings financials, and obviously making sure that you try to see what that impact looks like in the future state of the rebate model. For me, it was trying to isolate the rebates. For some health systems, and I don't know how others operate, but getting to the rebates, it's a hard number to get to. So imagine the challenge of now trying to find these specific rebates related to 340B and isolate them to see if they are accurate. So the primary thing that I felt was necessary was to create a separate financial account just for these specific rebates. So at least I can find them. And that's where I can start. And that way, if I can find those rebates in their own financial class or category, I can then take that and relate it to what I expected to receive, and work my way backwards. But if it's in the large, ocean of rebates that health systems may be trying to decipher, I think it would be a very hard needle in a haystack to find. So that would be my primary focus, is to leverage a separate financial sub-account to isolate them. And then, of course, leveraging relationship with vendors and using the current information that you already have with your TPA or that relationship, and trying to leverage what they can, so you're not repeating the same information twice, and hoping that you can kind of standardize that workflow and maybe take one less upload out of your daily operation, because the more integration that you have, there's also the more ways things can break and communication can fall apart. So I think the less communication, the less channels you have flowing data, the better opportunity to keep that kind of organized and streamlined. But I do think that having a separate account for your rebate funds is a start to being able to isolate those, and then of course leveraging your TPA to the best of your ability.
Got it. Thank you for that insight and advice. So let's talk about the governance, leadership, and vendor accountability. Uh, like, how do leaders build alignment across like pharmacy, finance, compliance, IT, legal vendors, and executive leadership when navigating this kind of operational challenges?
So I feel that I kind of view my role as an ambassador of 340B. I kind of introduced the program to the different service lines that you've mentioned. In my through the auditing process, we usually identify different departments and how their workflows can impact the 340B program. And very few people realize how their workflow impacts 340B until you kind of meet them and explain to them. So that is how I became familiar with, care management, finance, rev cycle, even, IS, the EMR, modifiers that have to be on my claims, the groupers for the status K medications that are separately payable. All of those things came about through, intense auditing and then realizing, what workflow impacts 340B. So when I meet with these different departments and service lines, I express how valuable their role is and how critical their role is to the 340B program. And that's part of my introduction to it. So then they become aware of how their workflow impacts us. And I think that integration is crucial to them understanding that, the patient being classified as inpatient or outpatient is huge for 340B. And if you have the right modifier on the correct J code or HCPCS code, that is also huge for 340B. So these are things that I work with the different departments on. And over the course of time, it has become, an ebb and flow that we work as a system, we work as a team, and we're all here for the greater good of the program. And that's how I learned that I could not operate in a silo. I could not operate in my office doing 340B by myself. As I mentioned earlier, I was a one-woman show when I started, but I have since evolved that, realizing that I need help from multiple departments and multiple executive leadership. And our executive leadership has been very supportive of our program. They see the value in the program. And that's why we as a system work very hard to protect it.
Awesome. That sounds very solid. So let's have a short rapid fire round. I will ask some quick questions. You can answer yes or no, whatever comes to your mind.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So in one sentence, what does rebate readiness really mean?
I would say rebate preparedness means flexibility. It means acute or keen sense of awareness of what is being submitted and what is being received. I think that's going to be crucial in being aware of what's going out and what's coming back in for this to be successful, if at all.
Got it. And when people hear that rebate readiness may only require a few additional hours of work, what are they most likely underestimating?
I think they're underestimating the integrity of the data that needs to be submitted and the efforts it takes to gather and collect the data from multiple sources that are not that are currently probably siloed by design, and trying to put all of that into one file per se and upload, and the flexibility of the program, or the constant changing of billing practices just because of payer requirements that may not be under, the control of the covered entity. There are multiple things that have to happen for a claim to be successful from, as we say, cradle to grave. So I think those are things that all happen kind of like the iceberg. There's the tip
Yep.
of the iceberg is the 5 hours, but there's the whole part that's below the sea level that has not been taken into consideration at all. And then once it hits the vendor or the source, the platform, it needs to then come back and make sure that it is accurate. And that will also take due diligence to ensure that there's accuracy there.
Got it. And if a cover entity is just starting, what is the first workflow they should map before anything else?
I think the first workflow would be to leverage your existing TPA and see if that data is housed and how they can ingest it and hopefully work with you to either submit on your behalf or provide you with reportings that can be used. That way you wouldn't have to actually build or create your own separate files and upload them manually. So I think you would leverage existing relationships and streamline the data you already have access to.
Got it. And for small team who are running 340B programs, do you suggest any AI or automation they can use to speed up their work?
I think it will be necessary if you are small or a very, underfunded or lack of resources, or most 340B operators have other jobs. I mean, this is other duties as assigned in most worlds. Yep. So I think in order to have visibility, because it's easy to take your eyes off of the program but you cannot set it and forget it. So I do think that there will be value into leveraging the use of having other eyes that work 24/7 and don't sleep or call in sick.
Got it. And before relying on any vendor for submission, what is the one accountability question every covered entity should ask?
I would ask for data security, making sure that your data, they will treat it as gold, as you would treat it. If they do not have the capability to protect your data, then I would probably think that would be a vendor you might want to steer away from.
Got it. Well, thank you for playing this. This was it. So let's talk about, you mentioned that you pivoted into 340B space. Do you have any recommendation for any kind of online learning or courses or any sources where people who are new in this space can learn about a 340B program?
Oh, definitely. The available to use tools on my Pexas website are immeasurable. I always recommend that to people who are getting introduced to the space, but I always send the caveat that if you've seen one program, you've seen one program. No two programs are alike. So that is why it's very important that you know your program and understand how your program is built, how it works, because they are definitely not all the same. But at least having access to a village of other healthcare providers in the same space has been very awesome. I have met many wonderful people in the 340B space by attending the meetings and coalitions and things of that nature. Just in my own community, just meeting people who do what you do or something similar has been very helpful to share ideas and also battle scars. Sometimes we make mistakes, we do things, it doesn't work out the way we planned, and we learn from those mistakes. And I think sharing that knowledge with new people in the space is very helpful. Trusting your vendors is crucial. So if your vendor tells you something about the program, I would look it up and confirm for yourself and make sure that that fits your program, because again, no true programs are the same. So just making sure you do your research and you try to create a support system or network of individuals in the same space or even similar spaces, I think will be very, very helpful, because you're not on an island, and you need to know that you have people who can help you in that respect.
Well, thank you for that. And you talked about the collations. So there is a summer collation happening next week. Are you going to be there?
I hope to be there.
Awesome. So do you suggest for all the newbies to attend those collation, and that can really help them to network and to learn more about updates in this program?
I feel that it depends on the detail of your role. Obviously, the university is paramount for anyone in this space. Coalition is a lot of 340B data and information. If your sole role is definitely 340B all day, all night. By all means, I do feel that it's beneficial, but you have to also know how to ingest all the information. It is a great wealth of data, a great wealth of resources. But again, even just the networking piece is invaluable. I think that is crucial. So I definitely recommend if you are able to attend that part. But more importantly, I think university is the primary goal. And then once you understand your program and you kind of know the way it works or ebbs and flows, then you can kind of apply it in a better format with the complexity and the volume of information from Coalition. But definitely think it's great if your schedule permits and you have the funding to do so. But it's definitely been valuable for me.
Got it. Well, thank you, Celeste, for that. So I think we have covered a lot of ground here. So before we let you go, if you could tell healthcare leaders one thing about preparing for the debate era, like one thing that might change how they think about operational readiness, what would it be?
I would say just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean that it can't be done. So thinking outside of the box as ways to channel and isolate your information so that you are keenly and acutely aware your financials are flowing, how they're flowing, if you have any hiccups in the flow of those financials, and being able to kind of root cause. So I just think, trying to have, as everyone would say, your eyes on every aspect of your program, but always keeping the patient first will definitely lead to success.
Awesome. Thank you for that advice. And Celeste, if anyone from our listener wanted to connect with you to learn more about you and your expertise, what is the best way to reach out to you?
I'm definitely available on LinkedIn. I frequent that space. That's where I see a lot of 340B colleagues and have met from different organizations. So I'm actually under M. Celeste Fowler, but I am on LinkedIn all the time.
Awesome. Well, this has been a thoughtful and practical conversation, exactly the kind of discussion we created 340B Pulse to have. Celeste, thank you very much again for joining us.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in through 340B Pulse, a North Arc Health podcast powered by Purologics. I'm Mohammed Atif. We shall see you in the next episode.